Guadalupe National Park lies in far western Texas and straddles the New Mexico state line. The park formally gained national park status in 1972 for its outstanding geological features and unique ecosystem. It is one of the world's finest examples of an ancient fossilized reef, and the present uplifted mountains rising abruptly from the desert floor are but a small exposed section of this mostly buried reef. At 8,751 feet, Guadalupe Peak is the highest point in Texas and affords remarkable views out over the Great Salt Basin and sand dunes below. It is considered a fairly strenuous hike as you gain 3,000 feet of elevation over the 4-mile trail to summit. The effort, though, is rewarded by these stunning views. Carlsbad Caverns, New Mexico, lies within the Greater Guadalupe Mountains National Park. It is a spectacular cave system with vast halls and chambers filled with a stunning array of formations, shapes, and textures. The subtle lighting throughout places emphasis on these wildly organic structures which captivate the imagination.
What is the difference between a cave and a cavern?
Cave and a cavern. The major difference is how many entrances it has. So Mammoth Cave, there's one entrance, but there are a bunch of caves that connect to it. So there's only one. We have 2 entrances.
So that's the differentiating factor.
Yep.
A seasonal colony of Brazilian free-tailed bats, as well as nesting swallows, make their homes close to the cave's natural entrance, and at times the cacophony of noise from the beating of wings is entrancing. It was still too early in the season for the main population of bats to arrive up from Mexico, where they roost in the cave and raise their young. I was not able to observe the incredible spectacle of the nightly mass exodus of millions of bats swarming out into the evening sky, where they spend the night feeding on insects and moths. Nearby my Carlsbad desert camp, I located a pristine mineral spring with some colorful residents. Bathing is something that happens as and when situation permits. So this formed tub proved to be a refreshing relief from accumulated desert grime. From Carlsbad, it was up over the Sacramento Mountains, passing through the town of Cloudcroft and on down to the Tularosa Basin and the magic of White Sands National Park. Nestled up against the San Andreas Mountains, White Sands covers an extensive area and is the largest gypsum dune field in the world.
What a beautiful place, White Sands National Park, New Mexico at sunset. Really doesn't get much better than this.
I stumbled across the Organ Mountains somewhat by chance, having left White Sands National Park after dark and in need of somewhere to bed down for the night. Both places share the White Sands Missile Testing Range as a neighbor. It is not uncommon out in these vast expanses of desert to have large tracts of land dedicated for military use. The Organ Mountains are located 10 miles east of Las Cruces, New Mexico, are formed from granite, generally run in a north-south orientation, and top out at 9,000 feet. Though I didn't stay here, the beautifully situated campsite at Aguirre Spring, nestled comfortably into the mountains, offers spectacular views back down the valley and out over the desert, and from here, several trailheads can be accessed. Today it was simply another opportunity to stretch the legs and get high on mountains. After a quick hike to Baylor Pass and back, I set my sights on the beautiful pyramidal slab of granite called Baldy Peak on the south side of the campgrounds. We're on the Pine Tree Trail here, making my way up and around this feature to our left, and going to try to see if I can find an access gully to go and climb Baldy Peak. It's almost 2 in the afternoon, so I'm perhaps leaving it a little late. Closer, there it is. There's Mount Baldy. We still got a long ways to go though. Well, here's the junction at which I'm going to leave the official trail, and I'm going to follow this little water course up. Following this little wildlife trail, pretty much contouring along a ridge line. Animals are not stupid. They're going to take the path of least resistance. It's certainly a lot easier up here navigating through this brush than it is down there in that stream bed. Always got to be cognizant of where you're stepping. This is rattlesnake country, and as temperatures are warming up, they're starting to come out. We got a little high meadow here. These plants, I'm not sure if they're about to burst into some kind of flower or whether this is last year's, but there we are. I'm going to try to contour around so I'm not going to drop down and lose any of the elevation that I've desperately tried to gain over this last hour or so. Let's go see. Well, my tolerance for this type of bushwhacking is waning rapidly. There's a lot of these sharp desert plants everywhere you go, and in some places the thicket is just impassable. The trouble is there's just multiple ravines coming down off these higher peaks. You try to work your way down the spine of them to their terminus, and it's a little easier to cross at that point, but I'm even having difficulty getting to that point. I don't know, folks. I might just have to call this soon. If you look back up the hill, that's all that elevation I've just lost in trying to navigate my way through this. A little disappointing. Seems like we're so close, but in fact that's still a ways away, given the obstacles. Well, reluctantly, I'm gonna have to give up my effort to get up Baldy Peak today. Perhaps if I had set off at 7 in the morning, might have been a different matter. Given myself the entire day to thrash through this thicket, and let me tell you, it is a thrash. I mean, in some areas you're sitting in one vantage point, and across the valley it looks like there's a pathway through, and then you get over there and you find you're in just as much of a thicket as the one you just left. So anyway, it's all good. The mountain will be there for another day, and perhaps we will have another effort in the future. For right now, I'm gonna head back, make some dinner, and perhaps have a nice cold beer. Hello everybody. Today I'm up in the Hilo Wilderness, 6,200 feet. This is a simply magnificent area. Check out my camp for the night. Today we're gonna head on up the one and only road. We're gonna go visit both the cliff dwellings, and after that gonna go take a soak in one of the hot springs. Promises to be a very enjoyable afternoon. So the Gila Wilderness is again a national monument, meaning that it has all of the physical attributes and beauty of a national park without all of the red tape. So let's get going. Just the scenic drive into Hilo Wilderness was worth the price of admission, which was $0. The Gila cliff dwellings hosted nomadic cultures for thousands of years, but it was the agricultural Mogollon people who settled here and built the dwellings in the late 1200s. Safe in their fortified shelters and with easy access to the productive surrounding land, the Mogollon inhabited these beautiful structures for about a century before moving on. Well, here goes the first of 2 river crossings to get to this hot spring. All my stuff is packed up in the bag, down to my shorts. And this is a chilly, chilly river. Refreshing, I should say. So far it's only up to my knees. Definitely having this stick is a helpful thing. Getting a little deeper here. But we're almost across. And there we go, number 1 of 2. Now, do we just walk barefoot? Save getting changed again? I'm thinking so. I did notice there's a sign at the beginning of this trailhead that explains that this particular wilderness area is part of the Mexican gray wolf reintroduction program, which takes me back to Fossil Rim in eastern Texas, where they are breeding the Mexican gray wolf and doing these very programs. So I would not be surprised in the slightest if the wolves that were released here actually came from Fossil Rim. Yet another river crossing. Looks to me like somebody has tried to create a semblance of a bathtub here. Well, the moral of that story is don't go pro anywhere without a spare battery. But suffice to say, the hot spring was very enjoyable. This brings me to the next piece of advice concerning the limitations of technology. Very recently, I just lost 90% of my videos that I've created over the last 3 months. A huge setback, to say the least, and one that may be recoverable, but at great expense. So I'd just like to say here, from the onset, that the name of the game, if you ever indulge in such an activity, is redundancy. Redundancy, redundancy, redundancy. Backup upon backup upon backup. My experience was simply that in creating all of these videos, it consumed a vast amount of my hard drive storage on my laptop, and I needed to get that information off there to continue making videos. So I transferred everything to an external hard drive. Makes good sense. Get it off your computer, free up some space, move on with the work. The software itself takes up a vast amount of storage space in producing these videos. So I went ahead and removed everything from there to create that space, and in doing so, entrusted all of those videos to simply one external source. That source failed. Now, these external hard drives are perfectly acceptable for desktop use where they are fairly stationary. But in my case, it's stored in the van. I drive down bumpy roads, and I wasn't aware of the fact that these items were so delicate. So in my case, I guess that's what happened. And
I have now had to take that hard drive to a professional outfit that restores and recovers information. It's not always the case that that can happen, but at least we're making an attempt here to salvage all of that very important information. I'm hoping that's the case because I can't really put a price on how important this media is to me. It's a document of this entire time on the road, and if I can have it back, then that is the price I'm just simply going to have to pay. So if you see videos in the future from Arizona, from Nevada, and through California, then you know things were recovered. If not, there's a huge gap in my trip, and that's just unfortunate, and I'm sorry about that. But this is the hard learning lesson I've just had to go through, and so I wanted to share that with you, that it's important to back up all of your information, at least twofold. So my advice to you, and certainly advice that I am going to follow myself going forward, I would rather have multiple smaller storage capacity disks than one large one should anything fail in the future. So hopefully this was helpful, and going forward we can just hope and keep our fingers crossed that I can get this information back and share with you some of these tremendous experiences I've had through some of these other states more recently.
Let's put all of this trauma behind us and go and take a dip in the nice, cool river.